when I went to school, and it was a long time ago, and I graduated from high school in 1974, and by that time, we had quit standing up and saying the Pledge of Allegiance every morning, and we didn't pray every morning. But when I was in elementary school, back in the early 60s, and when John F. Kennedy was assassinated, I remember that very clearly, we were saying Pledge of Allegiance every morning, and in some instances, we would pray. But we didn't do much praying in public schools, as I recall, but we did say the Pledge of Allegiance quite often. And then we went to doing it just on Monday mornings for the rest of the week, I think. And then we went to doing it not at all. So I think people walk around sometimes, I'm doing this for argumentative purposes because I want you to jump all over me. Because some of you have strong feelings on this, I would imagine, based on your religion, your family, what you think is right, what you think is wrong. But do people walk around with a chip on their shoulder and say, no one should tell me that I can't pray in school? Or no one tells me that I have to pray in school? It's my business. It's a public place. My family pays tax dollars. I can do anything I want to in public school with regard to prayer. What do you think about that? I teed that up well enough for you? Well, yes?
It'd be understandable that, I mean, if you don't believe in prayer, why should you be forced to pray if you don't believe in it? I mean, even if you're trying to be respectful, I mean, you don't have to bow your head, just be quiet for the prayer, I would think.
Does it make, but is the concern that is making a certain group different and feel uneasy and separate? For instance, if out of 40 students, 39 of you wanted to pray, but one person didn't, are we making that one person feel different and uneasy and uncomfortable in this group? I mean, is that what it's about?
I mean, it's not just in prayer though either. I think you have lots of other groups that you have among the schools that people will feel left out or feel different among, and those aren't necessarily touched on. So I mean, yeah, that person might feel uneasy and left out like during that prayer, but I don't know what the difference is with, I don't know, other groups or things that go on.
Well, that's a good point. I mean, even within the Christian family, for instance, there are different attitudes about what is right and what's wrong and everything else. That's why we have different denominations, right. I'll just use the Kennedy example. I was 7 years old, almost 8 years old, when the president was assassinated. He was Catholic. I had a really good friend that was in the Catholic Church. Well, as you may recall in your reading of history, it was a big deal that we elected a Catholic president. I mean, his Catholicism worried a lot of people, just like Mitt Romney's Mormonism worries people now, or Huntsman's, or whatever the case may be. It's the same thing. So back then, we elected a president that was Catholic. And I don't know why, my family never mentioned the word Catholic in my family. But I was in the library with my little friend, Mark, and I said, you know, I cried when the president was shot, even though he's Catholic. I learned that from the media. I didn't learn it from my family. I learned it from the media. I learned to say that there was a difference based on what I heard in the media. And he was offended by that, and I was upset that I offended my friend because I was just repeating something I'd heard on Huntley Brinkley News. By the way, it's black and white. Yes, it was black and white. And it came in very snowy because of rabbit ears. So the media influenced me on religious things. That showed us, Mark Carey and I were now different. He was Catholic and I was not. We never talked about religion before then. So we were different then. We still remained buddies. He accepted my apology. But even though we were 7 and 8 years old, that still kind of drove a wedge between us. You know what I mean? So is that what we do with this issue? I mean, I don't know. I'm grasping at straws, because I think this is a work in process right now. I just don't want people to advocate something because there's a chip on their shoulder. You know what I mean by that? Yeah.
I guess my biggest, since I've moved to Carthage, I'm from Wisconsin. I was raised in Catholic schools. I never went to a public school till I came here. And sending my daughter to Carthage High School, I was always amazed at how many religious undertones there were in that school. But I grew to understand that it was the community, and I just needed to
Well, this is
accept
the Bible
it.
Belt.
Right.
Yeah, right.
And I mean, back in Wisconsin, in the public schools, there's no way they would be singing religious songs at a choir event. But here, it's no big deal.
That's why we have to go to the community.
Mhm.
The Supreme Court uses the community as the model
Right.
to base a lot of its decisions on. What's generally acceptable in the community. I was a coach of a baseball team for several years, young men, and before, one of my players got up and say, "Hey, coach, can we pray before the game?" Okay, so we prayed before the game. "Hey, coach, can we pray after the game?" "Yeah, we'll pray after the game." I had several parents come up and thanked me for allowing the players to pray. I said, well, to me it's a wonderful thing, but some students I think were some players were a little taken aback by it or something. Was that the wrong thing to do?
No.
Sports teams do pray, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
So
they pray
do
all the
theater.
time.
Theater people have circles.
Yeah.
The high school theater groups meet in a circle and they pray to God.
But you know, one of the things along that line, Pledge of Allegiance. You ever watch the sporting events before the kickoff or the tee off or the tip off or whatever, and you look at the athletes standing around gaggling while the national anthem is playing. Some of them are very dedicated, cross their heart and look at the flag and all that stuff. Some of them will just be loosening up, getting ready for the kickoff or whatever, grabbing each other on the sideline, or whatever they're doing, and so they're doing all kinds of things. That used to bother me, but then I got to thinking, they have a freedom to do that. I may not approve of it, but that's their right to do that. What do you think about that attitude, that perspective? Do you think they all should stand there perfectly in a symmetrical line and cross their heart and look at the flag? Ideally, that's what I'd like to see, but I quit getting bent. If you go to a Chiefs game, you'll know what I'm talking about. One nation under Chiefs. That's the end of the national anthem. The Supreme Court has generally rejected the government's right. We'll leave it at this chart. But don't start packing up on me yet, please. I'll get through this as soon as I can. The Supreme Court has generally rejected the government's right to prevent the publication of materials to which it objects. Because after all, that's called censorship. And who's the government to reject? Who in the government rejects to this? The government can influence the media by prohibiting or mandating the publication of certain information, public service announcements, all that type of information. I have to tell you, I'm not sure where the FCC really started relaxing its laws, not laws, regulations on what can be said over the public airwaves. Because I'm going to tell you, what you hear now on television and on radio would never have been allowed in 1970 or 1980 or 1990. So there's been a kind of a transformation. And maybe now that we're this big community and we enjoy hearing the actual word without it being bleeped out. I was watching, I don't know why, I guess I'm old and I'm corny, but I was watching this stupid movie the other night. And the movie loses a lot of humor when some words are bleeped out. And I don't like profanity. But it does make a difference with regard to this particular movie. And so I don't watch the movie unless it's unedited. But I understand why it's edited when it's on public television. But I go to a sitcom like 3.5 Men or 2.5 Men or whatever it is, and some of these other almost anything's said. Did you ever watch a soap opera during the day and see what goes on, what the undertone there is about what's happening, maybe in the scene or behind the scene? That's pretty prurient, if you will. We'll start next chart on Friday.